So today's episode of Archaeology Crime isn't some expertly planned heist. In fact, in the world of archaeology crime, it's kind of a misdemeanor, but it's important for reasons we'll talk about later. And for this episode, we're going to have to get a little handsy because we are going to discuss the Bronze Hand of Prêles. Now, this subject, the Bronze Hand of Prêles, allows for endless opportunities for the use of puns, but here in this high-minded show, I'm going to avoid that kind of puerile behavior. So you gotta hand it to me. Now, I had read about this amazing artifact before, but to be honest, I came upon it by chance at the Bern History Museum in Bern, Switzerland, which happened to be hosting an incredible temporary exhibit about the Bronze Age. Now, that exhibit gave a really thorough and eye-opening account of the Bronze Age and how the new bronze technology transformed lives and art around the world, and really had a wealth of amazing artifacts. Plus, some of the items demonstrating the advent of the Iron Age, which of course ended the Bronze Age, and the enduring cachet of anything made of gold, a lot of those were showstoppers as well. For example, there's this arrowhead that we covered in another episode, which is actually made of meteorite-derived iron. Or the incredible golden hat of Schifferstadt, which the museum must have had on loan from another institution. One of 4 such hats found in Europe. It's a really amazing and very intricate artifact from the Bronze Age. But the main event, of course, was the Bronze Hand of Prêles, so let's go and get our arms around that, shall we? Okay, so in October 2017, 2 men were metal detecting in Switzerland, which is a major no-no in some of the country's cantons. Now, cantons, we're not talking about Chinese restaurants. That basically means a county in Switzerland. Anyway, this all went down in the small municipality of Prêles, which I think no longer exists in name as it's been incorporated in with some other villages into a different kind of political organization. This is just about 20 minutes down the road from Laten and the Latenia Museum, which we had previously visited. Well, it's unclear to me if these guys were actually doing anything illegal because I'm not sure if permitting is required in this particular canton. But in any event, they did do the right thing in that they found this hand and they did bring it in the next day to the local archaeological service in Bern. And for that, they were rewarded with a raid on one of their houses, charges being pressed, and eventually a fine of 2,500 Swiss francs being levied. But more about that later. Anyway, so what exactly did they find? Well, they found this very strange bronze hand, a bronze dagger, and part of a human rib, which was found nearby. The hand itself is just a bit smaller than life size, at about 17.8 centimeters in length, or 7 inches, and about 9 centimeters, or 3.5 inches in width at the palm. It's more gracile and thinner than an actual human hand would be, and by the time it was found, the fingers had broken off. It's sporting a fancy golden wristband of the type that would have been worn by a high-status individual in the Bronze Age, and the whole thing weighs about half a kilo, or just over a pound. The wrist end is hollow, so it appears that the hand was actually mounted on something. Now, the style of the dagger was a dead giveaway for the Bronze Age, but just to make certain, a small bit of the organic adhesive that held that gold wristband to the hand was radiocarbon dated, and I assume the rib bone was as well. Now, just like with the Nebra Sky disc, the authorities were really not certain if this thing was for real or if they were being played by the people who dug it up, because it was just so frickin' unusual. You see, if this was from the Bronze Age, that would make it the earliest bronze sculpture of a human body part ever found. And it was actually rather lifelike, at a time when most representations of the human form were highly stylized and exaggerated. Well, just as with the Nebra sky disk, those doubts fell away once the radiocarbon dates came back, because this thing was old, as in 3,500 years old, with an estimated date of creation between 1500 and 1400 BC. Armed with this information, the local archaeological service was eager to do some further investigations, but those would have to wait till the next spring of 2018, as the winter in Switzerland doesn't exactly produce ideal conditions for digging. But anyway, those digs would happen. They lasted 7 weeks, and they turned up a lot of interesting information. Now, the archaeologists took the initial diggers with them and followed their directions to the site. And soon they uncovered the body that was associated with the dagger and the hand. Now, that body was in a very fragmentary state with lots of bits and pieces of bones, some of which were actually stained with the corroded metal that they had been buried with. You see this in a lot of old burials, like in this picture where the staining is kind of green from the grave goods. There were enough fragments of bone to tell that this was the burial of a man, and among those fragments were actually those 8 teeth. Now, if you remember from our little osteology lesson, you can estimate the age range at death of someone based on the wear patterns of their teeth. And in this case, that age range was 25 to 45, roughly. And in the grave, they found some scraps of gold that matched the wristband on the hand, as well as the missing finger from the hand. So that proved the hand came from this particular grave, like the diggers said it did. In addition, there was this long bronze pin thought to fasten clothing, as well as this spiral, which is believed to have been a hair ornament. Now, the site itself was on a high place with a great view overlooking Lake Beale. That would be as in Jessica Biel. Hello. And the man had been buried in a mound that was put on top of an older structure. So at this vantage point, on top of a site that was old even at the time he was buried and very substantial in size at 12 meters or over 40 feet in length, we know this guy was an important dude, though just how extensive the site was is unknown, as the team decided not to fully excavate it at that time. And of course, the gold and bronze objects were also a dead giveaway that this was an important guy. Further scientific analyses on the hand also took place. So they looked at it under a high-powered microscope, and the dendrites, that's the crystalline structure of the hand, indicated that it was produced by casting. Now, casting involves pouring molten metal into a mold, which at the time this was created would have been a relatively new technology. So yeah, this was a special guy.
I am special!
Moreover, additional scientific analyses indicated the metals came from far and wide. The gold probably from Ireland or Schleswig-Holstein, which is currently in northern Germany. The copper probably from the French or Swiss Alps, and the tin from Cornwall. Hence, the metals came from far-flung trade networks and would have taken some time, effort, and resources to acquire. However, because the digging had already damaged the grave and the diggers didn't remember exactly where on the body the hand came from, there were some important clues that were missing and not recoverable into guessing what the purpose of the hand was. So regardless of whether or not the diggers actually needed a permit, this is the issue with metal detecting. You may find something, but if it's more than just a loose artifact and is actually a site, in excitedly digging that up, you're going to be destroying a lot of the evidence unless you're super careful and know what you're doing. On the other hand, these two guys actually did the right thing by bringing the hand into the local authorities. They didn't steal it or just keep digging. They clearly weren't looters. So we want to encourage other people to do that too.
Peter, Peter, Peter. No good deed goes unpunished.
I guess given that the guys had their heart in the right place, but also did some significant damage to the site, which may prevent us forever from knowing the function of the hand, the authorities wanted to split the difference on this one in a little bit of Solomonian justice. Anyway, so the compromise in this case was a little harassment from the police, a several $1,000 fine, but not really the iron fist of the law. But, I wonder what you think of this punishment. Was it fair? Let me know in the comments. However, this brings us to that last point, the key point. This bronze hand is a totally unique item, at least so far has been found from the Bronze Age, and it's buried along with this high-status dude, or apparently high status. So what exactly was the function of the hand? The exhibition at the Bern History Museum delves into this question in some depth. Well, clearly he was a man of some importance, and in prehistoric times, and in fact throughout much of human history, unfortunately, a man of importance had to be able to do some fighting, or at least appear to do some fighting. So, theory number 1, the hand is actually a prosthetic.
You lost your arms in battle. How terrible. But you grew some nice boobs.
However, even if that were the case, this hand was actually pretty fragile and immobile, so it wouldn't have really functioned very well. At least Jaime Lannister's was heavy enough to whack someone with, or to stop a sword. Although it may have been a hand that he didn't actually wear, but carried around with him as a replacement for one that he had lost. But honestly, I don't really get the point of that. Theory number 2. It was a symbol of authority for the man,
And you will respect my authority.
which he may have carried around on a staff, and that would explain why the wrist was hollow. I suppose this is possible, as there's other examples of this. The hand is often used as a symbol of authority, for example, la main de justice, or the hand of justice, which symbolizes royal authority in French coronation ceremonies. We also see this frequently in Christian Orthodox iconography. And finally, theory number 3. It was a spiritual or ritual item, and you can take a drink. You see, the thinking here is that hands are often symbols for things like protection and good luck, or other symbolic meanings. For example, the Hamza hand, which first came about in ancient Mesopotamia, but was later adopted by Judaism and then Islam to symbolize power, protection, etc. Or the many hand gestures of the Buddha, each with different symbolic significance. And as for that hollow wrist, well, it still may very well have been attached to a staff or even a statue. And in this scenario, the man it was buried with, he probably would have had more of a spiritual purpose than have been a warrior. However, back in the day, those two roles were often the same thing. I mean, bishops led armies well into the Middle Ages. Well, whatever it was, there are some vaguely similar artifacts that were found from the Iron Age in places like Spain, Italy, and Austria, and some of those were from funerary contexts as well. However, we don't know what the purpose of those were either. Unfortunately, unless another of these things is found in situ, we'll probably never know what it is. And we have those diggers to blame for that. But we also have to thank them for finding the thing and properly returning it to the authorities. Hey, if you like what you heard, give me that thumbs up below, hit that bell to subscribe, or if you want to support more independent archaeology content, consider contributing to my Patreon, where you can enjoy some exclusive members-only benefits and other goodies. Until the next dig.